Starting with the name of Almighty Allah, who is the most merciful, the most beneficent. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum, dear students of grade 6. Hope you all are fine. Open your books at chapter number 1.4a, the cells. After learning this topic, you will be able to know what cells are, what are the subcellular structures that a cell contains, and what are the differences between plant and animal cells. Let's talk about the cell. Cell is the basic structural, functional, and biological unit of all known organisms. Cells are also building blocks of life and the smallest unit of life. A simple cell consists of cytoplasm, a jelly-like substance which holds all the organelles of the cell enclosed within a cell membrane. Cells also contain genetic information inside the nucleus, which are responsible for conducting all the activities and functioning occurring inside the cell. Cells are too tiny to be seen by naked eye, and therefore we require special instruments called microscopes to see them. Now let's find out who and how was the first cell discovered. In mid-1600s, Robert Hooke, an engineer microscopist, discovered the cell in a bottle cork. He cut thin slices of the cork and observed it under a microscope. He found many honeycomb-like structures and small pores in them, which are named as cells. Anton Leeuwenhoek, a new scientist which observed microbes under a microscope for the first time, and with the passage of time different types of organisms are observed under a microscope, like plants, animals, and microbes. They started making theories about how the cell is formed and how is it the fundamental unit of life. In 1839, Sheridan and Chevan, two scientists, proposed the cell theory. According to the cell theory, all living organisms are made up of one or more cells, which means that all living organisms are either unicellular, means made up of one cell, or multicellular, made up of many types of different cells. Next point was the cell is the fundamental unit of living organisms. A new scientist, Virchow, have proposed a third point of cell theory, which was all living organisms arise from pre-existing cell by division. Let's start with what cells are. You can think of cells as the basic building blocks of life. And what we mean by this is that they are the smallest unit of life that can replicate independently. So if we took an example of animal or plant cell, they could divide into 2 cells, then into 4 cells, and so on. And it's these cells that make up an organism. To see what I mean, imagine we took a human and looked at him closely under a microscope. We see that he is made up of cells. So the skin contains skin cells, blood contains blood cells, and so on. In total, we contain hundreds of different types of cells, and it's thought that an adult contains over 40 trillion cells altogether. Next, we need to look at the actual structure of cells. So, we will start by comparing animal cells and a plant cell side by side to highlight their similarities and differences. Now, to understand cell structure, we need to look at the different parts that make up the cell, and these are known as subcellular structures or organelles. Firstly, both cells are surrounded by these cell membranes that control which substance can pass in and out of the cell. For example, they will let some chemicals through the membrane but not others. Both types have a nucleus which contains the genetic material or DNA of cells, and so it effectively controls the activity of cell. They also contain fluid-filled jelly-like substance called cytoplasm. This is where all the other organelles exists. You can basically think of it like a water filling a water balloon, but the consistency is closer to jelly. Next, they also have a lot of mitochondria whose job is to provide energy to the cell. And finally, both cell types also contain loads of ribosomes, which are the site of protein synthesis, which just means that it's where proteins are made. Now, all of these subcellular structures that we have just mentioned are common to both animals and plant cells, but importantly, plant cells also have a few extra structures. For one, they have a rigid cell wall around the entire cell that's made up of a material called cellulose. And because cellulose is really strong, the cell wall can provide support and structure to the cell, which is really important because if too much water entered the cell, then it would burst. Next, a lot of cells is often taken up with this thing called a permanent vacuole. You can think of this as a big sac that contains cell sap, which is basically a mixture of sugar, salts, and water that the cell uses for its needs. And finally, they also have chloroplasts, which is where photosynthesis happens. Basically, photosynthesis is the process by which plants use energy from the sun to make sugar like glucose. And to help with this chloroplast, a pigment present contains chlorophyll, which absorbs the light energy that is needed for photosynthesis, and this chlorophyll substance that make a plant's leaves green.